back to Shortcut Sherry's tips and tricks for what goes where. This is the second video in the series, and this time we're going to talk a little bit more about SharePoint. Now, specifically for this video, we're going to be talking about SharePoint Online. Hopefully your company is working in Office 365 and SharePoint Online is available to you. I've been using SharePoint since before it was even called SharePoint, and I'm passionate about it. Last time we talked about OneDrive. This time we're going to talk more about SharePoint. But first, let's talk about the differences between the two. OneDrive, as I mentioned, is kind of your personal files, the ones that you're going to work with personally or with a small group of peers. SharePoint, to me, is that big file cabinet that's out in the hallway that everybody in your work group might need access to. Certain people may have keys to that content, and you may just have access to it. You can read some things, you can edit some things. Somebody else controls the permissions for the most part. We talked about what we get in OneDrive: a terabyte of storage, being able to view and edit and share your files, document properties and metadata, co-authoring, major versioning, access to files from any device, and then offline sync. SharePoint document libraries also offer co-authoring, access to your files from any device, and offline sync. But let's look at some of the differences. SharePoint document libraries are also cloud storage, but they don't have the limit of a terabyte. It depends on the settings for SharePoint. In SharePoint, you have granular permissions. Granular permissions say you can edit this, you can read it, you can't even see it. You get to decide, even document by document, what information people can see. As far as the document properties and metadata, you can create custom document properties and metadata in your document libraries, which I prefer to use for navigation. I use those instead of folders, and we'll talk about that in another video. You also have major and minor versioning. So instead of just version 1, version 2, version 3, you can have version 1 and then 1.1, 1.2. So you can kind of incrementally track the changes as they go along. There's also more in SharePoint. These capabilities of being able to check in and check out your documents, provide workflows for feedback or sign-off, being able to use content approval features where somebody can submit a document and nobody can see it until somebody in charge says it's okay. Audience targeting that lets you kind of say, these are specific security groups that can see certain content. Retention and disposition workflows. Basically, it's a self-cleaning oven. You have documents that only need to be kept for 7 years, and you can set up a retention policy on those documents and it'll automatically clean it out for you. And then documentation standardization. I've done an entire course on that at lynda.com or linkedinlearning.com. So check that one out. It's a really good course. So why am I talking about all this stuff in SharePoint? Because to me, documentation that I might have stored in OneDrive because it's just for me and a couple of my peers probably actually belongs in SharePoint if it needs any of these features. That whole me file versus we file changes the dynamic if you need any of these capabilities. So getting organized. How do you get organized when you're moving into SharePoint? First of all, you need to decide your information architecture. I tend to gear towards functionality, not the org structure. I've worked for too many companies that they reorg and then everything has to be moved and all the links break. I found that this is the best way for me is to create it by functionality, because accounting is never going to do infrastructure. Technology is never going to do accounts payable. So that's the way that I like to design my information architecture. Same strategy as with OneDrive. Before you move, clean out the garbage, remove any special characters because they're not happy in the web, shorten your file name so that you ensure that integrity between SharePoint and your applications stays intact and doesn't break, and then flatten your folder structure so you get there within 3 clicks. Keep in mind that SharePoint does a whole lot more than documentation strategy. It is a workspace, not just for you, but for your whole team. You not only can store documents, you can track your tasks, share calendars, keep people informed using announcements, and then there's all those apps. So there you go. That's my strategy for SharePoint Online. Thanks for watching. I'm Shortcut Sherry, and it's my job to make your job easier.